Venusaur is part of the very first evolution line in all of Pokemon, and it's probably one of the first Pokemon you think of when someone says grass type. You may remember it for its atrocious back sprite in red and blue, or that time that it got high as fuck in Pokemon Stadium. But did Venusaur have any memorable moments in the history of the TCG? Did it have any cards that made a major impact? Let's find out. Venusaur got its very first printing in base set, where it was kind of the stepchild of the starter trio, where Charizard was the most sought after card in the entire game at the time, and Blastoise was basically the best card competitively at the time, and Venusaur was just kind of there. It had a great ability, but it didn't really have any other grass type Pokemon to form any kind of synergy with that could really benefit from it. My favorite card to play with it at the time was Jungle Executor, but it was a really risky play and wasn't all that great. Also saw some builds back then where Venusaur was actually paired with Charizard, even though this deck took way too long to build up and get to those stage 2, so it never fared very well. But there was a Venusaur archetype at the time called Venucenter, where you could capitalize on Pokemon Center, which healed all damage off of a Pokemon, but you had to discard all the energy. So with Venusaur's ability, you can move all of the energy off of a Pokemon, play Pokemon Center with basically no consequences, and then move all of the energy back. So depending on what kind of Pokemon you wanted to pair with it, you could run this and get some kind of synergy out of it. And I have a sample deck list for a Venusaur deck on the channel if you want to check that out. Base set Venusaur was later reprinted in the Legendary Collection, which means that it could be paired with bigger grass types at the time, like the Neo Genesis Meganiums, and later the E-Reader Executor that was eerily similar to the Jungle Executor. The next Venusaur printed was Erica's Venusaur from Gym Challenge, and this card was pretty great at doing spread damage, and it was available in the Prop 15 format, which was the main competitive format at the time, and so stage 2s were a lot more viable then. But like the Venusaur before, it didn't have a lot of grass types that really had great synergy with it. The Erica support trainers weren't all that great. So it really just went into an updated archetype, which was Venucenter, where you could run 4 copies of Venusaur and 4 copies of Erica's Venusaur, and they did have a little bit of synergy together. You could still benefit from abusing base set Venusaur's ability with Pokemon Center to help this card out, and so it did okay. There's also a sample deck list of this particular Venusaur build on the channel if you're interested in that. We got a Black Star promo Venusaur that just straight up was not good for a stage 2. It didn't have synergy with any cards at the time, plus it didn't have any updated Bulbasaurs or Ivysaurs to evolve from. Venusaur decks up to this point were having to rely on that 40 HP Bulbasaur from base set, which was problematic. Expedition brought us 2 Venusaurs in the same set, one of which wasn't used very much because it didn't really have anything useful on it for a stage 2 card, but the other one was very useful. Harvest Bounty lets you attach an extra energy every turn, meaning that with 2 energy per turn, you can power up attacks twice as fast and outspeed your opponent. And in a game where that's the main goal, that's a pretty damn good ability. Maybe one of the best abilities you can have in this game. In the e-reader format, it was paired with Expedition Charizard, which I think is an ugly-ass card, but Harvest Bounty lets you get off a Scorching Whirlwind as soon as you can evolve into Charizard. And because you're able to play 2 energy per turn with Venusaur out, discarding from Scorching Whirlwind isn't really going to hurt you that much most of the time, only when you're having to discard them on. Even so, you're still only going to have to wait 2 more turns before you can deal another 120 damage. And 120 damage is going to be an OHKO on almost everything in this format. After Expedition, Venusaur got a Best of Game promo in Dark Venusaur, and it's not a very good card. Horde Pollen can be very disruptive, but with 70 HP for a Stage 2 in this format, it's not that great. But this card is good for consistency's sake. If you remember in the Team Rocket set, there was a Dark Charmeleon and Charizard, and Dark Wartortle and Blastoise, but we never got Dark Ivysaur and Venusaur until now. Because there's always been this trend, with a lot of exceptions, mind you, but typically Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise are all printed in the same sets together, and this kind of helps fill that out. The Fire Red and Leaf Green set brought us the first Venusaur EX, which is a remastering, souped up version of that base set Venusaur. It's got the same energy trans ability, but with some better attacks this time. But this time it actually got a good grass type partner to go with it so that you could move those grass energy around with purpose. Butterfree's Whirlwind attack is like a gust of wind where you can deal 30 damage and then bring out something to help stall your opponent while you're building up energy across your Pokemon that you can really take advantage of energy trans with. The Caterpie and Metapod from this set could help accelerate and stall out your opponent at the same time, depending on what your opening hand looks like and what you needed to do to get set up. Butterfree could then Whirlwind out whatever target Pokemon you wanted, then free retreat into Venusaur, and energy trans the energy off of Butterfree to use Pollen Hazard and put a lot of special conditions on your opponent's Pokemon in a very annoying way. And then Venusaur got a third promo card, which was still just middle of the road, not useful in any situation. I mean, just look at the next Venusaur card that was printed in Crystal Guardians. This was a card that was meant for a starter deck. A card that's really only supposed to be good in pre-release tournaments or in the context of starter decks. But outside of that, I still say this is a very solid card. It's got 2 great attacks and a pretty good ability. The only problem is that this was in the period of Delta species cards, and all of them ran off of this Delta engine. And because Venusaur was its normal grass type, it couldn't really benefit from those trainer and energy cards. So as you can see, Venusaur really has a lot of ups and downs within the TCG. Here's another one of those just weird middle of the road cards where, yeah, it's pretty good. That's a great Pokepower, but again, Venusaur didn't have any good grass type partners or other cards that could help it out in this format. So it was really just kind of on its own and thus not very useful. And this is the Secret Wonders Venusaur, by the way. For the next tie, here we have a Venusaur that actually has some help from some heavy hitting grass type Pokemon. The Supreme Victor's Venusaur had Green Aroma, which could remove special conditions and prevent special conditions on all of your grass Pokemon, which meant that you could bring in a Tangrowth level X, use that healing growth to in turn start healing up all of your other grass Pokemon that are getting damage on them. Gardenia's Roserade from Rising Rivals has 2 very low cost attacks that can get damage out early game because Roserade is a basic in this case, and it pairs really well with Desperate Pollen, which is another low cost attack on Venusaur. So you're going to be using these attacks very early on, while at the same time healing up your Pokemon using Tangrowth level X, and then very late in the game, you can use Big Growth to recycle all of those, slap them down on Venusaur, and start getting off those special reactions, which are going to deal a lot of damage considering how synergistic the Roserade and Venusaur are at getting special conditions on your opponent. Rumble Venusaur is a waste of cardboard, so not even going to talk about that one. And Dark Explorer's Venusaur is another one of those cards that's more suited for a pre-release tournament deck. Floral Scent is pretty good as a support ability, but there are just better ways to get Pokemon out of your deck. When X and Y came out, we got another Venusaur EX. This time EXs were all basic Pokemon, so it's a pretty good basic considering it has 100 HP. The attacks are a little high in energy costs, but they came in 2 different versions. You have your regular EX, and then you have the full art card, and then you have the full art reprint, which came out as an XY promo. Mega Venusaur EX from the same set also got a regular version and a full art version. Mega Venusaur had Crisis Fine, which was alright. It's mainly that 230 HP that made it worthwhile. However, in XY there were no Spirit Link cards, so to Mega Evolve you pretty much wasted your entire turn. So at that point in time, Megas weren't really used. Now, a Venusaur Spirit Link trainer was printed in the Evolution set, and this came right between the Venusaur EX I just showed and the Generations Venusaur EX, which also came with a Mega. It's debatable which Venusaur EX is better. I myself prefer the XY one. However, I prefer the Generations Mega to the XY one. I like Bloombuster more as an attack. The HP stays the same on this card, but Bloombuster deals 10 more damage. And I like that you have that 50% chance to deal spread damage, which I think is more useful than just putting special conditions on your opponent's active. Also want to mention the upcoming Celebi and Venusaur GX tag team card. And this is very familiar, it should be. Pollen Hazard and Solar Beam show up on a lot of Venusaur cards that I've talked about today. And I think that the Evergreen GX attack is amazing. Not only are you healing all of the damage off of you, but you're shuffling your discard pile back into your deck. The last time a card did that was Lysander's Trump card, and it got banned from play. And I realize that you only get one GX attack per game, and that your opponent's going to take 3 prizes if they knock this thing out. But considering that it's a basic, and it has the options to inflict special conditions, deal heavy damage, and do these great side effects with Evergreen GX, I think this is a great card to end the video with because it's probably the best Venusaur card that we might ever see. Do you agree? Let me know down in those comments. Do you have a favorite Venusaur card? And I really like doing these TCG history videos, so let me know down in the comments which ones you want to see next. I've had Charizard, Blastoise, and Mew suggested already, so I will be working on those in the coming weeks. But if there are other Pokemon you're interested in, let me know. Thanks for watching. Bye.